morning and welcome everyone. My name is Kim Woodworth and I'm the Executive Director for the Economic Development Council of Colorado. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. You've all entered into this webinar on mute for recording quality purposes, but we really do encourage you to be a part of this conversation. Please ask questions. If you feel more comfortable putting them into the chat section, we'll make sure to be watching out for those. Or you can just go ahead and raise your hand by using the, there's a participation button at the bottom of your screen. So raise your hand and we'll stop and ask those questions of yours. Again, today's event is really to educate, to inform, and hopefully have some more CXD professionals in the state of Colorado. If you have any questions after this webinar, please send them to our administrator, Bobby Vanden Heuvel, at edcconline.org. She's going to drop her email address into the chat section. And we'll also follow up with today's webinar with a link to the actual webinar and presentation. We're also debuting a brand new web page called Roadmap to Certification on our website. And so this will live there into perpetuity. So if you forget some of that information, you'll always be able to refer back to that. I'd like to thank our Professional Development Committee for bringing this webinar to fruition. Really, this is an amazing group of professionals that are led by Adam Kruger with the City of Thornton and Stephanie Trawler with the City of Westminster. They are just such a fun group of folks and very smart, very active, very engaged and really helping EDCC bring some of this amazing content to our members. So if you're interested in getting involved, if you're a member, this is an awesome opportunity. And Bobby's going to drop in their email addresses. So if you're interested in getting more involved, this would be a great opportunity to do so. All right. On to today's webinar, or to the moving on to the webinar here. I'd like to introduce to you today's moderator, Stephanie Trawler. Stephanie is the Business Development Manager for the City of Westminster. Stephanie's primary focus is assisting in revitalization of South Westminster and business retention. She brings over 13 years of economic development and project management experience. She has a strong background in helping communities achieve their short-term and long-term goals through facilitated strategic planning processes. Stephanie is a certified economic developer with a focus on strategic planning and neighborhood revitalization. She holds a bachelor's degree in international business from New Mexico State University and a master of public administration from the University of Colorado, Denver. Let's give Stephanie a warm Zoom welcome. I'm going to let Stephanie take it away here and introduce the rest of our panel today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kim, and thank you for always providing such great opportunities to work with our fellow colleagues throughout Colorado. I'm Stephanie Trawler. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, so welcome. And I'm excited to introduce my panel of friends. We have all, we were chatting a little bit before this, we've all been working with each other close to a decade now. And that means supporting each other through to become a CECD and a trusted network to call when you have a question that you just don't know where else to go to. So with me today is Adam Kruger. He's the Deputy Director at City of Thornton. Jill Mendoza, Economic Development Manager, Town of Superior, and Tyler Purvis, Community Development Director and Assistant City Manager at the Town of Brush, exclamation point. And what we're going to do today is really talk to you about our experiences in becoming certified. I'm going to give a quick overview of IEDC, the International Economic Development Council. There's a lot of acronyms today, so we will try to spell them out as much as possible. So IEDC is the international standard for economic developers, and their certified economic developer credentials is what we're talking about today. You could visit their website as well. There are certain credentials that you need to meet before you sit for the test. And I'm going to go through those really quickly and just a high level, but I encourage you as you go down this pathway to check their website as well. So before you could sit for the test, you have to have 4 consecutive years in a paid economic development position. You have to take 6 out of 12 courses, and now is a great time to knock those out because you could do a lot of them online. Through EDCC, we also host the Colorado Basic course, which is a requirement. You'll see several speakers today at that course too, and it's a really great way to start the pathway and also network with your fellow colleagues and get that foundation laid. Out of those 6 courseworks, basic being one of them, you have to take 4 others: real estate development, retention and expansion, and credit analysis. Credit analysis is not my favorite one, just so you all know. It's really, unless you're into that thing, it finds, and then you could take there's a list of 2 electives that you could take from a list of about 8 or 10. They do also require that you take like a prep work and an ethics class as well before you sit. And we, as this group we'll talk about all that a little bit more. And then once you've finished all your coursework, it is time to actually sit for the test. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is not an easy test to take. There's 3 parts to it. The first part is multiple choice and short answers. The second part is essay. If you pass those 2, you are moved into an interview panel with colleagues as well. And once you pass that, you're certified. You get to put those initials behind your name and be recognized as a leader in our industry. It doesn't end there though. You have to come back, IEDC, we never stop learning. And you have to come back and get recertified if you want to keep using those initials. So there is a recertification process as well. And that you have to do that every 3 years. They want to see professionals being engaged in their community and in their state and local networks. They want to see you engaged with IEDC, and they want you to continue with your professional development and continue to go and get those credits that you need to keep fresh. So that is it in a nutshell. Again, you should visit IEDC's website. There's a little application pamphlet and it spells it all out for you. And with that, I really want to invite Adam and Jill and Tyler to unmute themselves, and we could really just begin a conversation about our experiences in becoming certified and the decisions that we made in order to become certified. So I'll start with Adam and then Tyler and Jill, just because that's the order you are in my screen. Why did you choose to become certified?
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, and good morning, everyone. I'm excited to see the number of folks on this. Actually, we weren't really sure what the turnout would be, and I think there seems to be some interest in this, so that's great. So I was in economic development for probably 7 years before I started the process of really going after my certification. I would say that the process isn't necessarily for everybody. If you're interested in economic development as a profession, though, then I would say it's absolutely worth pursuing. I wanted to learn more about the profession. I'd realized after a number of years that this was going to be my chosen profession, kind of moving forward in the career path that I was on. I was interested, and I thought there would be benefits in going after this. So I decided to pursue it then and start really taking the classes. One thing I would add to that is, if you're interested in it now, and it looks like there's a few on here that are, it's a really good time to do it. It took me a number of years to go to the different classes. We had to travel across the country and go to different places. I did the ones in Denver, but there was only like one a year, and so I was traveling all over the place. And so from a budgetary standpoint, it took a few years to get approval to do the different classes, 1 or 2 classes kind of every year to get to that point. And now, if you want to do them, they're all offered online, so there's no travel costs and expenses of when you stay someplace. So it's a really good time, I think, if you're interested in pursuing it, to go after it, because you can do it much more affordably and more conveniently because you can do it right from your computer.
Fantastic. Tyler?
So I started in, the profession back in 2012. I went to the basic economic development class back in 2013, and I got my certification just this year. And much like Adam, it was not in my vision to actually pursue the certification. I would go to the IEDC training courses in Denver as they would come. So as Adam said, about once a year, I would go to those. And over time, I just began to get all the necessary ones done. And it was mainly out of educational purposes that I went to those. I had no idea what economic development was when I really stepped into the industry. And so just getting a greater understanding of all the different components of it. And over the course of time, as I began to look at the certification itself, I realized that I had pretty much all the necessary classes done. I ended up doing 7 of the classes. You're only required to do 6. And so I thought, there's really no reason I shouldn't pursue this. And so I just shifted my mindset from just classwork to let me really study hard and get a lot of this ingrained in my thinking so that I can pursue the certification and take the testing, which I did successfully.
Fantastic. Jill, what about you?
So I didn't know that I wanted a career in economic development. I kind of fell into it, I think, as many of us do. And I, over several years, decided that this was the path I wanted to go from a professional standpoint. I've always worked for small municipalities, and so I wore many hats and had to do a lot of work in the various different branches of economic development. So for me, taking the exam really helped me have a comprehensive understanding of all of the facets of economic development. Oftentimes in a larger municipality, people are assigned to specific roles, and someone does retention and someone does marketing. But in a smaller one, when you're doing all of it, it really is helpful to learn all of those various disciplines within the economic development field. I, like Tyler and Adam, took classes over a course of a couple of years and sat for the test. And I actually did not pass on my first round. I did not pass the essay portion. And so then I had to double down, decide if I wanted to sit again, and then take it another year later. So.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Thank you guys for sharing. Like many of us, same thing, fell into economic development, but I knew once I knew what economic development was, I was like a duck in water, and I really understood it intuitively. But I did not pass the test on my first try either, and had to retake the essay section as well. And just so you guys know, if you pass one portion of the test, you don't have to retake it. You just have to sit for the portion that you didn't pass, and then you can move into the interview. And I've actually known people who haven't passed the interview. Nerves got the better portion of them. So even though as a general rule, I think economic developers are pretty extroverted, it doesn't mean that you will automatically pass the interview panel too. So,
sorry, Stephanie, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
One thing I would say is I always thought, like, if you just don't drool on yourself during the interview, you're probably not gonna okay. But I do think that I have heard stories of not passing, and most of what I've heard is folks that don't show up dressed in professional attire and don't have a good understanding. Maybe they celebrated too hard the night before after they found out they passed. I'm not sure, but showed up just unprofessional and kind of not prepared. If you have gone through one tip on the oral, I think, I do think that's certainly the easiest part, but is make sure you know your resume, because that's kind of what they're going to follow when they ask you questions, is based on your experiences there. They'll ask you some general stuff too, I think, about, why you went after this, and what you see yourself kind of doing moving forward, but also a lot of it's based on your resume itself. So while the oral part's not complicated, dress professionally and definitely know your resume so you can kind of respond to your experiences.
Maybe if you do pass too, don't celebrate the other two portions. Don't celebrate too hard.
Yeah, that's right. Celebrate.
It is an accomplishment, though.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe, Stephanie, that would be a good thing to talk about, the difference between the essays and the multiple choice and the oral. The oral is much more focused on your actual experience, and then the essays and the multiple choice are specifically content from the book, not necessarily your professional experience.
Yeah, that is a good point. So short answers and multiple choice, 100% verbatim from the book. So as you guys are preparing, you have to put in the time and read the books, because not all of the IEDC courses teach exactly to the book. And that took me a little bit to figure out. There was a little bit of a disconnect because you have people trying to educate you on their experience and their perspectives, and they're not going to go through every page in the book. The essays, I've been a grader. It is a word count. So they are looking for a combination of your experience, your comprehensive, that we're reading these comprehensively, but they also want to see the points from the book in the essay as well. So it's kind of a merge of the book and your experience. And then the essay, of course, the oral is all you, knowing your resume, not showing up, as Adam said, with drool. Truly, you have to prove yourself as a professional. So thank you, Jill, for bringing that up. I want to ask each of you as well the benefits you've seen after you became certified. And I'm going to go in reverse order today now and start with Jill.
Sure. So the first benefit that I realized was the actual knowledge. I was not really interested in pursuing it, but I knew that it was necessary for potential career advancement for me. So I did it a little bit begrudgingly, but in the end, what I learned was so helpful, and it was just such a broad base of knowledge. I felt like there was a lot of value in what I learned through the process that I don't think you would learn otherwise. It's not stuff that you really pick up on the job necessarily. So that was the first benefit. And then the second benefit that I've seen is I have been able to advance my career since achieving my certification. And I definitely think that it is important for leadership opportunities to set you apart from others, and to show that you have a mastery of the field in economic development. So,
yeah, thanks, Jill.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler?
Definitely in agreement with Jill on the first part, that the knowledge that you gain through the whole process is tremendous. But in addition to that, granted, I've only had my certification for a few months, so I haven't quite seen the payout in one sense as I might over the course of time. But I can say that I was with Pueblo West Metro District when I got the certification. I'm back with the city of Brush up in Northeast Colorado in a different role. And I know that in the conversation, me having that certification was a strength in coming back to the position overall. In comparison, we've talked a lot about this on our committee about the tangible benefits of this in comparison to not having it. Other states around the country put a big emphasis on having this certification. If you've ever looked at economic development positions and job descriptions where they're hiring, they'll usually say they're looking for someone with that certification. And so if it's a financially driven decision, I think that definitely is an asset to have, because you have what it is that a lot of people are looking for. It's a validation of the professional aspect of economic development. And so being able to bring that into a position, into a role, into a meeting or a room, I think could definitely give a little more room for you to voice your thoughts, your opinion with some authority.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the big one for me is I'm better at my job for having done it, and I wasn't necessarily expecting to have to gain as much from the studying process, candidly, as I did. The test is the test, but the studying process itself, I learned a lot. To Jill's point earlier, the broader base of economic development, we all wear a lot of hats, and I've worn a lot of hats over my career too, but I had not touched on everything that the materials touched on. I had not had experience in everything, and so I really became much better at my job and much more of an all around economic development professional when I was studying for that. The other thing I would say is I have not, I got my certification in 2016, roughly, I think, and I haven't looked for a job or gotten another job since, so I can't speak so much to that. But I will say that I think there's like 35 economic CFD professionals in Colorado, give or take, and that number seems to be going up. I don't have a ton of technical based for saying this, other than it seems like a number of years ago, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, maybe, a bunch of people were taking it, and it kind of tapered off, and now there's been a lot more professionals taking this exam and testing for it over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think it is growing in Colorado. To Tyler's point, it's a bigger deal, certainly in other states. IEDC, I think, says, if you've got your certification, you can make, on average $25,000 more a year if you versus those that don't. I'm not sure that's the case in Colorado, but it does matter. If you're looking for a job and you're competing with other people, it's really the only certification for our profession out there. And it's certainly the one that people look to the most. And so, I think from my standpoint, not only did I want it for potential future, career advancement, but I also wanted it for, or what I was unexpected about it was how much I really learned throughout the process and how much I've used it. I still have my books sitting right over here in my office, and I pull them out when I have questions on stuff, or I'm working on something that maybe I just need to refresh my memory on. So I still use them to this day.
I do too. And I think, for me, it gave me additional confidence. I mean, we're in some high pressure roles sometimes, facing council on a big incentive or a big development, or, facing the community that is angry about an issue. Having gone through this experience, I feel more assured in my skill sets because the studying forces you to be so. So, and I think I heard that theme with all the speakers too, is it forces you to be more confident and more competent, and it adds that that credentialing to the profession. So thank you guys all for sharing that. So, we've talked about how the test is not an easy test to take. I will say the statistic, I think, is only 30% of test takers pass. And that's even with the retakes in there too, like I had to take the essay. So it's not, what we're telling you about studying is very true. Can we talk about what, some tips, some tricks that you guys use to help you study and to help you achieve that? And I'm going to start with Tyler today on this one.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, the whole process started 9 years ago for me. So it's not like you retain this information once you go to these classes unless you apply it every day. And I agree with Adam that my experience was a lot of what you have to study, you don't do day to day. And so it just kind of slips through the cracks because it's not there. And so when it came time to prepare for the test, it was definitely kind of going back to the drawing board on a lot of this stuff and opening up and just studying. Adam will probably speak to this more, the resource that he's going to recommend, so I won't say it, but I talked to him because he had a certification. I mentioned, hey, I'm going to be pursuing this. And so he said, well, use this. And so I went online and began to use the tools that he's speaking about. And I found a lot of it was very much, just what's what I'm looking for. It was essentially definitions of all the terms. And I studied, had hundreds of terms in my head, ready to take the multiple choice test, expecting just definitions. And there was very little definitions. And I was actually thrown off a little bit. A lot of it was content directly in the books themselves. And so honestly, I was a little offended because there was another IEDC prep course that had kind of what we're doing in one sense, where they would prepare everybody who's ready to take the test on these are the things that you do. And they were very heavy, at least I got from it, on knowing the definitions. And so I took that as definitions of words and terms. And so I studied them all. And again, the test didn't have as many as I thought. I had enough time to go back through and look at my answers a second time and change some of them. I ended up passing, but a big thing was the not just the content in the books, but also the processes. Like in the table of contents, for instance, you have a topic and then all these subcategories on steps to take. And so looking at those again and again and again, and in my wife and I's bathroom, we got the double sinks and one of those big mirrors that encompasses that whole wall there. And so I took a marker and I wrote down all the processes that I could fit on this mirror, and it's just covered in words. And as I'm brushing my teeth at night or just sit there, and I would just look at that and just study and try to memorize all these different steps in the processes, and which was very, very helpful for the essay part because they were actually asking for specific processes. And so it was off the top of my head that I did that. But I would say if you are pursuing the test and you're not that close to it, I would say don't stress too much about retaining that stuff now as far as cramming it. But as you get closer and closer to it, of course, you're going to want to spend more time on reading and highlighting and memorizing all the different components that are in those books.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, just by show of like Zoom hands, who is planning on taking the test maybe in this year? Next year? Some point in the future. All right, good. Well, it's good to know that too, because this is a good kind of overview. And we'll get into some mentorship questions later on. Adam, what about you? What did you do to study and prepare for the test?
Yeah, so I was intimidated by it, like I think a lot of people are. You know, you hear the amount of people that fail, and the pass rate being so low, and it kind of gets a little bit in your head when you're preparing for it. But what I would say is this: I would say a couple things. One is, you know, when I was taking the test I was down in New Mexico and I took it, I was talking to other professionals down there, and there was some people that were taking it for the third or fourth time, and they hadn't studied for any of them. And I was thinking to myself, I mean, you know, you're not going to pass it. You're wasting your time and your resources on something. You're not going to pass it if you don't study. You're just not, because we don't use the terms and the definitions and the steps that they talk about that you're tested on a daily basis. I don't think it matters really what you do. You know, nobody's really broad enough and technical enough to use all that stuff on a daily basis. So what you need to do is you need to take the time to study for it. I do think that while, you know, you might not get it your first time, you will be successful if you spend the time to study. So a couple of things that I would recommend. One, try to find a study group, and everybody's personality is a little bit different. I am not the kind of person that will do a great job of preparing ahead of time. I would do everything last minute. And so having a study group kept me on task. You know, we kept each other accountable, and it's pretty easy now, I think. I mean, this was before we were really doing a lot of Zoom stuff. And so, you know, we fortunately we were all in the same office, so that made it easy. But now I think if, you know, even at this class today, or at this webinar today, if you wanted to, you know, connect with some people that may be interested, you guys could, you know, once every couple of weeks, if you're planning on taking it around the same time, study together, you know, and it makes a huge difference. Not just, you can learn the terms and definitions on your own, but talking them out and understanding the processes and the steps really helped me, particularly in the essay part, because you know, that's really where you apply kind of that combination, as I think Stephanie said earlier, of the book stuff with your own experiences. And so, you know, definitely if you can, you know, everybody's a little bit different in how they prepare, but for me, a group saved me for sure. The only challenge I had was we all drove down to New Mexico to test together. And I remember, like, we got down there and I was like, look, if I don't pass and you guys do, I'm gonna be super happy for you, but I'm gonna rent a car and drive back separate, because I'm not gonna want to be like a downer on the way back, right? Fortunately, we all passed, but the idea was still, you know, it's great to have that study group, you know, and I know others that have done the same thing, and I think it makes a big difference just because it keeps you accountable. We started studying candidly probably 9 months before we took the test. Now, we didn't study all that intensely then. It was probably, you know, an hour every couple of weeks or so. And then it kind of tapered off a little over the summer. And then we got more intense as we got closer to it, you know, as I think is normal, but it still helped kind of continue to have those conversations. The other thing that we did, I hadn't taken any sort of formalized test when I did this in probably 15 years. So it was helpful for me to do the practice tests, and particularly the practice essay. I only did one because, you know, it's a lot of writing, but I did it, and it helped me kind of get my head back around, you know, taking a formalized test. I don't know, I just hadn't taken one in so long that it was really helpful for me to do that. I will say though, the practice test questions, I thought were way harder than the ones that were actually on the test. And so I was like a little bit more intimidated when I was reading them. They were more confusing. I was like, what are they asking for here? But on the test, and this was my experience, I don't know, others may have other ones, I didn't feel like I knew what they were asking me to do. And so I did it. And the other thing, I think to Tyler's point, this will be my last thing, is, you know, the terms and definitions aren't everything, but we use a tool he was referencing. It was called Quizlet, and it's an app you can download on your phone. And it has, if you type in, you know, CXD certification, you know, there's a bunch of different things on there. I can't attest to all of them, but I know that the stuff under Julie Jacoby's name is the stuff that we put in, and it's terms and definitions. And it is, follow up with me after if you want the name for it, but it's it's a really helpful tool because I could be anywhere. I could, I was at my kids' dance lessons and I'm out in the lobby and I'm just running through terms and definitions or, just doing various things. And I was able to kind of memorize some of those, including lists. And that's, I think, what's the other piece that's important is, you've got to know, and to Tyler's point about kind of the different categories, you've got to know the steps to, the development process, memorize those. And when you're doing your essays, they're going to give you opportunities to put those in there, and do that at every opportunity that you get, because I think Stephanie mentioned this earlier, I've graded a few times too. And that's how it's done is we have a list of terms and definitions and things that we are looking for in those essays, steps and things that need to be in there, and you get points for every one of those that's in there. So study the steps, understand the kind of the different processes that are used, and use a tool like Quizlet because it's just so easy. You don't have to have the books with you everywhere. You can kind of run through it. The books still got to do the books, but a lot of the terms and definitions will come out of that. And I thought it was pretty helpful. So,
Jill?
Yeah, so I would recommend that you kind of plan about a year in advance if you're going to sit for the exam, because it really requires you to read for sure the intro book cover to cover, and for every single word, not just skimming through, but really having a mastery of all of the content in the intro book. And then your electives, you want to have a good grasp on. So spending the time to read and understand the material is really important. And then it's like Tyler said, going through the verbiage and just memorizing it. I actually used physical note cards because I could take them with me everywhere. I went to the gym and just got on the treadmill and went through it over and over and over again. I also had a study group, and I thought that was really helpful. You can kind of talk through concepts and keep each other on task, keep progressing through the material, and also challenge each other, question each other. So it's easier to really feel like you have a mastery of the content when you can articulate it back to someone. So not just saying it to yourself, but and as an example with the lists, a bullet point list will not suffice. So you have to be able to apply every one of those bullets and talk about what happens in that step and how you would apply it. So you want to be really thorough. It's not just a matter of reading the list off at the top of your head. It's actually going through an example of how you would apply it. I think that I probably put too much emphasis on the intro book. On my first go round, I did have a really good mastery of a lot of, like Tyler said, the vocabulary and the lists. So I did pass the multiple choice on the first round, but the essays are over your electives as well as the core material. And you have to go through your elective books and really feel like you have a good handle on it. I think there was some concepts in the electives that I didn't quite get into detail on, and they actually appeared on the test, and I was lost. I couldn't come up with an answer because, again, the test is testing to the content of the books. So you have to be able to pull verbiage from it, give examples, and if you don't have that, you can't just pass based on your experience. It has to be from the book and from the material within the book. I think also another really helpful thing about preparation is having a mentor. So I contacted IEDC and asked to be assigned a mentor who had actually just been through the same experience I had. She did not pass on her first round. And so she kind of gave me the motivation and the encouragement to try again. As Stephanie mentioned, you don't have to take the portions that you pass the second time if you take it within a window. I think you have about 2 years from when you first sit for the exam to take it again. And so you have to decide if you are going to double down and start studying again. And it's really hard to want to do that after you've just spent 9 months or a year studying, to think about going back and doing it. So I did take a break and then started it again. The mentor was great because not only could I relate to her with her experience and get motivated, but also she would give me test essays And one of the things that she recommended was to take the essays and really simulate the exam. So what she would do is we would agree on a time. She would email me the essay, and I would have to complete the essays within a 2.5 hour time frame. So it really gave you the time pressure and the word count and all of that. It would simulate it. So if you do that at least once, I would recommend that, because then you can feel what it's like to try to have to recall and write under pressure. It's not the same if you just, give yourself free rein and look in your book and all of that. Like, you've got to be able, again, both portions of the test, the written part, are timed. So you have to be able to do it under pressure. But, and I know any one of us would be willing to mentor or at least talk to you about our experience. So feel free to reach out. And I think, any CXD would be happy to do that as well, because we all can relate and share our thoughts with you so that we can make you more successful if you decide to go for it.
Thanks, Jill. I've also mentored. It's very rewarding. I see a hand up, Mike. I don't know if that's a hangover from the question, or if you have a question for the panel.
I had a question. I've taken a couple classes already when I worked, prior, when I worked for the City of Loveland. But it's been a few years, and I just was curious about how much they update the data and the books, and I still have the coursework. Obviously I have to take a couple more electives, and Adam, I may, or Kim may follow up with you just for some recommendations on some of the electives.
Sure.
But the question I have is, like, how much can I rely on a coursework that was from, I think it's like 4 years ago, maybe, or do I need to kind of reorder the
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'll invite everybody else to kind of share their opinions and their experiences as well. So when I became certified, it was a long path. I had some stops and starts. The coursework is still, you still have to attend all the coursework. What you get out of the coursework as opposed to preparing for the test are different. So in the coursework, you're really learning from practitioners and their experience, and they're sharing that knowledge with you. The actual test, which helps with your professional development and your kind of well-roundedness as well. But the test is 100% from the books. So you have to keep, like, every time you sign up for a course, they mail you a book. I'll show you I'm like Adam, mine are right here, handy dandy. And this is, you can probably still see my notes from when I tested. This is what your 100% what your test is going to be on. So it's still valuable. You still are required to go to the courses, either online or in person, but the test is going to be on the books.
Yeah, and I think she's absolutely right. The only thing, I'll just add one little thing to that, and that's, if you took the course a long time ago, like 5-6 years ago, there may be an updated edition of the book that you might want to check and see. That would be the only thing I would say to that. The course itself, you don't need to retake, because to Stephanie's point, you've got what you need. But if they've updated from that standpoint, if they've updated the book at all, and that's an easy email to IEDC to see if they've made some tweaks to that, just so you are dealing and studying the most recent and current stuff.
So with that, I think we've covered a lot. We've been talking a lot. We want to hear from you guys. What are your questions? What are you dying to know? Concerns that you want to talk about? I want to turn it over to you guys and just have that conversation.
Adam and Jill, you guys both mentioned these practice essays. Is there like a way for me to look at that? Like, is there a list of them somewhere of practice essays to start kind of reviewing?
There is. I think when you sign up for the IEDC prep course, they give you an example of 2 or 3. Is that right, guys? I think there's 2 or 3. Yeah. And if you want to reach out to one of us too, we could give you some examples of additional quizzes. They're kind of buried on IEDC's website. So if, like, for me, the essay was definitely, I I hate writing, and guess what I do all day at work? Write memos. Like that's just my life, and does not fill my cup. So the essay does require a little, like Jill said, requires a little bit more strategy. And so if you want those, we could follow up with you later, Katie, and get them for you.
Okay, I have a few more actually too. Is I have taken these classes for like the last almost five years now, and some of the electives that I originally chose probably are not like what I like, I guess. Would it be worth it for me to retake some electives? Like, do you get to pick like, hey, I want to talk about marketing, or I don't, but that's my example. But so would it be worth it for me to take some classes of stuff I'm actually interested in?
Yeah, I think I would say yes, because if it's something that you're interested, you can learn more, you can develop that skill more. You do get to pick, like they even give you a choice of all your electives. You're like, oh, I want marketing because that's something I'm really good at, something I really dug into. So I would say on the electives, it's also like the credit analysis. I don't like it, but to keep that skill set fresh, I will take it again because I know I don't like it and it kind of goes in and out. So it really is, it's your decision. It's kind of, your choose your own ending, choose your own journey kind of book. And so it really just depends on what you need as a professional and what you enjoy as a professional. And I invite the panel to.
Stephanie, go ahead, Tyler.
Just simply that, just understanding that whether you enjoy it or not, you're still going to have to study the same for it. And so if you find that you're going to retain something that you enjoy better, I could definitely see that as a viable option. Otherwise, just put your head down and swallow the pill and remember stuff that you really don't enjoy, just knowing that you're going to be tested on it, and then just go forward from there.
I just wasn't sure if it was like random. You like randomly got like your elective for the essay. So I just wanted to see.
Yeah, you get to choose when you get set up. You can choose whatever 2 electives you want, and so the one that you're more knowledgeable in is definitely the ones that you want to be writing and being quizzed about.
Stephanie, you're braver than me if you're going to take the credit analysis course again just for kicks.
Well, I'm not, but it's.
I would say I agree with what everybody said. Definitely do something. Pick electives that you're interested in. If that has changed over time, I would definitely encourage going to electives that you're either you're doing more in your day-to-day job, or that you're just more interested in. As follow-up to after the exam, after I got my certification, I've actually taken a couple of other classes. Part of that was for my recertification, but part of that was also just things I hadn't done before that I was interested in learning about in more detail, and they came to Denver. So it was just kind of a win-win. So yeah, I definitely think that, the more well-rounded you can be is good. It's never kind of a waste, but if you're more interested in something, definitely chase that.
Just getting kind of panicky now. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want my electives are really what I do anymore. So
yeah, I would say that in my experience, I chose strategic planning on the first round, and I did not enjoy that essay at all. And when I took it a second time, I changed my elective because it wasn't a good fit for me. So I would recommend that you, choose the electives that you're passionate about. Like Stephanie, if you do small business development, and that's something that you work in every day, like definitely align those courses with what you do or what you're passionate about. And then it's important to note, one of the tips that everyone always gives on the essays is that the finance essay or credit analysis, there are no calculations. So it's all theory and all like vocabulary. So you don't have to be scared that you're going to actually have to do some equation or analysis. It's all just verbiage from the book.
Yeah. And the questions are usually multi-layered. So they're like, you're a new economic developer in town X, and the city manager and city council want you to do a credit analysis or a feasibility of, this business coming in. What steps would you take? So they kind of set it up, and so they want to see your experience. Like, you can't just regurgitate, like, here are the steps and move on. Like, they want you to expand that a little bit more. I know we're probably making this more scary. We don't mean to be, Katie, sorry, but we want you to study. I think as long as you study, you'll pass. If I could do it, you could do it.
Well, no, I was going to take it in September, but I've chickened out. And so I'm going to wait a little bit longer. But yeah, it's scary.
And
Yeah.
I did take the test online this year, and I think IEDC going forward for their testing, they're going to do that, have that option at least once per year as well. So they went through the typical process of the proctoring to ensure you're not cheating when you're there by yourself in your office, but which of course is good. So I actually preferred that over in person. One, for budgeting reasons, because the local government was kind of broke, so it's cheaper that way. And then two, as well, I don't know, I guess if I would have felt a little bit more pressure in a room with people doing it the other way, but that's just me.
Yeah. It is nerve-wracking when you're in the room with people, like people use earplugs and things like that, because you hear everybody typing, and then you see people getting up when they're done and you're not done. And so there is definitely a dynamic when you take it in person.
Yeah.
Another tip that I think is good is really to memorize, Tyler sort of mentioned this earlier, the table of contents of the intro book. Make sure that when you go through the intro book and you look through that table of contents, you feel really comfortable about everything that is listed there. And even maybe make note cards about that, and make sure that your notes reflect back, all of those table of contents, because those are really the most important concepts in the book. So that's a good way to structure your notes.
And for the essay, if you do take it in person, I actually tested when I passed the essay at my home state, New Mexico, with Adam and the Thornton crew. So it was a nice little celebration. They do give you like a blue book, a pamphlet, like just some loose paper that you can jot down your thinking, so it's not rattling it in. You can kind of organize before you start typing. That really helped me, because I was thinking through the steps. I was like, step one, and then I'm like, wait, what was it? So I wrote down all of the steps first, and then a point or two about each step, and that is actually a really helped me pass the essay as well. So just knowing that what your tools are when you go into the test is important to know.
Looks like Stephanie has a question.
Shout out to Stephanie. I like your name and I like the city you work for.
It's weird. It's like I know you or something, the other Stephanie. So my question is, I'm fairly new to economic development. And I know you said there's the 4-year requirement. So would you recommend beginning the process, at least, starting the classes and everything like that, since it does sound like it does take a while? So, even though I'm not in qualification with the 4-year in a position, by the end of this, I would be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would recommend that. Your intro to economic development, I did that about a year after I started, and that's a requirement anyway. So that's a good foundational thing to get in early on. And then the learning process, it takes time. I think all of us had indicated no one got their certification within the 4 years. Just kind of fell into it in one sense, but I would recommend doing those courses sooner than later. That way, one, you get the educational experience, and then two, you are taking the necessary steps. So when the time comes and you've met that threshold, you also have a lot of the tests if you wanted to pursue the certification.
I think it's also helpful to decide whether you want to do it, right? Taking these classes and seeing the content and kind of navigating through this career path. I think you'll be able to decide by taking the classes if this is something you want to pursue.
Yep.
Yeah. Stephanie actually just joined our team, so thanks for being here today, Stephanie. The other thing that there is a code of ethics for us who have passed the test. We can't tell you what's on the test. We can't tell you the questions. We could just tell you how to prepare for the test. So we can't give you the cheat sheets, unfortunately. We're bound to a code, and it is kind of like, it is a club. I feel like, like a cool kid club where we've passed that, and we want to keep that standard and help you guys, but we're not going to give you the key to pass. And I think that's important to know as well.
It's also important to take it really seriously. I mean, it is an investment of time and energy and resources, and it's no joke. Like, if you fail to study, you will fail to pass. And if you don't put the time and energy in, it'll be a waste of your time, you know. So if you are going to do it, it's important to take it very seriously. And the recommendations people tell you, you really need to take them to heart. A lot of people skip over them or think they're shortcuts, and truly, the way that people recommend to prepare it, you really need to stick with it.
Yeah. Trisha, you have your hand up?
Yes, so I've been in economic development for the 4+ years and just took the basic this summer. So I'm just starting on the process, but I haven't taken any other class. If I was to just say I'm going to hammer down and get it done, what's the realistic time frame of getting all of the courses done and the prep work for the test? What's the average time range for that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your availability and your budget. So if you have an unlimited, your employer says, you know what, crank them all out, you could probably do them all online in a year. It might be a bit much to absorb. You could do it if you had the support of your and budget. I think you could probably do it online. There's 6 classes if you did one every other month.
Well, I recently received the Betcher Scholarship for the Doers and Difference Makers, so I'm taking my scholarship money to complete it. And so I have that financial support there, and I'm supposed to get a lot done within a year because I'm supposed to report out to it. But I have a lot, you know, I'm in rural Colorado, so I wear a lot of hats and trying to figure out time frame of what's actually realistic. So I know there's no correct answer. I just wanted to see.
My thoughts on it would be, I think, you know, if you have the resources, and obviously, you know, everybody wears a lot, you wear a lot of hats, you're busy. This is on top of your normal work. So, you know, I would say though that, you know, the one maybe thing I would caution you about is trying to rush too far into getting it all done in a year. Take the courses is fine. But then I would allow myself probably another, 9 months to a year to just study after those are done, or maybe you've got one to do the following year or whatever it is. And that's how I did it. And I think I took my final course, the spring or something of the year that I took the exam, but I was studying throughout that time. But you're going to have limited time. If you're taking, a number of courses in a year on top of everything else you're doing, you're going to have limited time to study. And so I would say, just my personal opinion is it's probably better to give yourself extra time to just prepare to study for it. And it's not like you have to study every day for a year. I don't think that's the case. It's just that year gives you time to do it in a way that's still conducive to your life and your job. And so you can kind of study, like I said, hour every week or two, and read the books and then get together. And that's what we did. We read on our own, and then we got together and we talked about it. So.
Yeah, I definitely was a crammer. So I took about 2-3 months, but they were intense. Like I was studying 3 or 4 hours every day. And even like using the Quizlets as well. So it really depends, your runway of studying really depends on your learning style too. That's something we can't tell you. That's something only you know. But I think a longer runway is less stressful. I crammed it in, and I wish I hadn't.
Another thing that I did was I had already completed all of the requirements to sit for the test, but then I took additional classes in that study period that I had up to the exam, because I just felt like getting more content in my head was better and hearing it from other people and everything. So I actually continued to take classes while I was preparing. And that was when some of them shifted online. So it was easier to do because I could do it from my office. And it was really helpful.
Yeah. So we have about 3 minutes left, Stephanie. Can you quickly talk about just what it takes to do some of the recertification so that you are maintaining your certification?
Sure, I'll even get I have a file of like recertification. You have to get recertified every 3 years. And I think, it's in the wrong, that is a project file. You do have to get recertified every 3 years, and I really recommend coming up with a strategy. And panel, please, before that deadline, because they do require you, it's a point system, and you're assigned points for different activities. So for example, you have to go to an elective course or an IEDC course. That's a set of points, and you can only accumulate so many points in any category over the year. So you have to you have to get involved in your community. You have to attend trainings, outside of IEDC as well. So ICSC, for those of you who work in retail, is considered a training course that it would count towards your recertification. Being involved with IEDC as well, hosting a training, grading, attending some of their leadership training as well is all different points. So there's a lot of categories, but it really is, you have to achieve points in each of those categories to get your cumulative points to recertify. And there's a fee, of course, and then they send you a new certification. Did I forget anything, guys?
You nailed it. I think the only thing I would add is I think the fee, if you're an IEDC member, is like $350 to do it. You don't obviously have to take any more tests or anything like that. You just fill out a form that shows that you've got those points and when you went to those different classes. There's a lot of options. EDCC's Drive Lead Succeed conference, you can get a point for that. I haven't found the point system. My certification is this year, and I actually had all my points last year. I don't find them to be crazy hard to get the points, but like Stephanie said, the key is you got to look at this little matrix and make sure you don't just get them all in one area, because you can't use them all in one area. Like, they want you to go to an IEDC course, and they want you to do some training or some teaching or something. They want you to attend local events. So you got to get points in all of those areas. So it's not overly complicated, but take a look at it. There's pretty good resources on their website too. And I think EDCC's got some as well. So
I think we're at time. So please reach out to Adam, Jill, Tyler, myself, Bobby, or Kim. I'm so happy we got to spend some time together, and I'm really proud of Coloradans trying to get their certification. It does make a difference on our state and our profession. So thank you so much. Kim, I'll let you close it out.
All right. Yes. And just to follow up on that recertification, all of our events, including this one, are approved for those credits. So EDCC is also working hard to help make sure that you guys are being able to recertify, as well as, from what I hear, is this correct, Stephanie, or Adam, that even participating on our committees and leadership roles, all of that can actually help towards your recertification.
Absolutely.
Yep. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So I want to thank our panel. Please give them a Zoom clap for really helping us look through what it takes to get to our CFD. I know what you feel. I am not a good test taker. I've taken every single course, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do it. And here I am, running the state organization. So I'm with you on this. And so maybe I'll help start the study group, and we can all do it together. And again, thank you to our Professional Development Committee for always thinking about these wonderful opportunities to grow and build our leadership here in Colorado. Follow-up items, like I said, send any of those questions off to Bobby if you have any further questions. And then the links to the recording and presentation and follow-up will be early next week. We'll have a dedicated web page for all of this. And Bobby did put a survey link in there, so please take that survey so that we know how we are doing and how we can improve if we need improvement. So again, additional tools, resources, and network of academic development professionals are found on edcconline.org. And good luck studying. We're here for you. We're your cheerleading squad, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you. Have a great day, everybody.
bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.